Hi, howdy and welcome. This is the Babies with Knives podcast with our regular host, Alice Peng.
Hi, everyone.
We also are joined by me, who we're going to be doing a Supers revised edition character creation. And the reason that we're doing this is because Syko has we did a Mutants Mastermind game earlier today, and he was asking about Supers and how that worked. So we figured, well, one of the best ways to do it is to see some character creation in action and get a feel for it that way. So I think both Alice and Syko here are going to work on some characters as I jump through the book and attempt to help them. We'll see how it all goes.
Why don't you start with Psycho, because we know that I've done this a lot.
Well, actually, that's the reason I was wondering if you wanted to do one just so that he's kind of seeing
Oh,
parts
sure.
of it as it's going, rather than you explain the board rules of a board game and then you're like, go play now, and they're like, I can somebody else take the first turn? No, the ting ting kicked you. You have to go first.
That's true. Okay, so what I'm going to say about this right now is, before we continue any further, Brandon has made an amazing character sheet generator. It is literally a generator, not just a character sheet. If you have any understanding of Google Sheets, of spreadsheets, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I will make sure to put the link down below in the description so you can go and check it out for yourself. I'm going to go load up a copy for myself before we start so that I can start creating my character.
Mind sending me the link?
I will happily do so in just a moment.
This is the kind of awesome thing that high quality radio does. Start sending the links after we start recording.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That's got nothing to do with the radio. It's all to do with the planning.
So I just dropped it right into the Discord chat for you as well. And for anybody who might not already know from the Supers group, you're going to need to make and this is for everyone that uses this sheet, you're going to need to make a copy for yourself, because the share is only going to be view only. This way we prevent people from accidentally messing it up. So create a copy for yourself and get to rolling with it. So I'm going to make a character today called Solar Flare. I have not actually gotten to write this character out before, because she was intended to be an NPC that never actually used her powers.
And I heard something about Solar Flare is Sunspot making love with somebody, with somebody that does explosions, and the power's coming from that.
So Sunspot, not Sunspot. Bleh. Solar Flare is essentially a martial artist that creates concussive solar flares whenever she attacks. So when she punches something, the impact creates a flare of energy that similar to a solar flare, and that's why she's called Solar Flare. And depending on the way that how many she's attacking, etc., the flare can get rather large, and so it is a very visible effect that can alert people to trouble. So, let me save my own copy.
So, Supers is, if you've got the sheet open, you can see is broken up into a few different areas. There are your resistances, which every character is going to have the same 4 resistances, unless you are like a robot or something that you can buy a way out of having some of them, if I remember correctly. And the resistances are composure. That's for like taking social damage. But additionally, if you're defending in a fight and the bullets whiz by you really fast and are really close, you barely dodge them, that would be composure damage. You realize what's on the line. Then we've got fortitude, which is just like fortitude in Mutants and Masterminds. It's how tough and strong that you are against damage. Reaction is how fast you're able to move. All 3 of those are things that if somebody's throwing a punch and you take damage, are things you can regularly take points off of. The last one is will, and that's a resistance to mental attacks, possession, and as well as social combat, just like composure. Will is generally not something that you can take damage on when somebody throws a punch. Just because you get hit in the face does not mean that you are any weaker to a mental attack. Certain attacks will target different ones, but in default, that's generally the first 3 are if somebody's thrown a punch. Will and composure are if social. But there's lots of ways to change that around as you go. On your Resistances, they all start at 1 die, and we're going to be making 25 die characters, by the way, which is in the superheroic realm.
I was just about
The
to ask what range we were doing. That's
the
important.
breakdown is 10 to 15 is a pulp hero, kind of like the Shadow from the pulps, all sorts of characters like that. The Spirit superheroes are 20 to 25 dice. This is going to be from Daredevil, Spider-Man, up to X-Men style. Avengers are going to be probably at the top end of that, and going into the Global Guardian, which is a 30 to 35 die, which is going to be more like where the Avengers top out, and the Justice League has a lot of members that are there, the iconic Justice Leagues. And then the last one is the Cosmic Legend, which is 40 to 45 dice. And so that's going to be the higher powers of the Justice League, Superman, Martian Manhunter, that kind of thing. You can really represent a lot of good characters at that 25 die. Sure, you might say, oh, I could be stronger, I could be more this, but you should be able to get a decent representation of most characters, I think.
Now, Brandon, the other option, because honestly, since I never intended to actually stat her or use her in an actual thing, I don't really have a lot of what I have in mind of what I'm going to do with her. I can stat out Wild Card or Scarab for our audience, or a number of others that I do actually have an idea of.
That doesn't sound like going through and making a character.
That sounds fine.
All right. So, but yeah, Alice, I would definitely say that statting up a character that you don't know,
Solar Flare sounds great.
or to convert, but you've already done versions of the characters that you just listed in Supers.
I guess that's true. I guess that's very true. Okay. I can do Solar Flare.
How are you looking at your resistances with 25 dice?
Solar Flare, I believe, would be pretty high in reflexes, moderate in fortitude. So I would say I'm going to go with buying 3 dice. Each of your starting resistances, your 4 resistance, composure, fortitude, reflex, and will, they start at 1 die for free. So I'm going to buy 3 dice into reflexes, giving me a total of 4 dice. I'm going to buy 2 in fortitude, giving me a total of 3 dice. I'm going to buy 2 in composure, given her role, and I'm going to buy 1 extra die in will.
Okay.
So,
and just for some sort of idea on how much each of those are, 1 is an average person, 2 is excellent. So for fortitude, it's citing like firemen, soldiers, police officers, endurance athletes. 3 is exceptional, elite soldiers, elite endurance athletes, veteran tough guys, hard as nail brawlers. 4 is legendary, the peak of human perfection. 5, you're getting into superhuman fortitude. 6, world class, and 7 is legendary, superhuman. And so that gives you some idea of where things might end up.
So for an understanding of this character, this NPC that wasn't intended to be statted out, she was a member of a superhero team for about 4 years, several decades ago. And she ended up retiring because her family pressured her. She was pressured into the world of politics. So while she was a superhero, she maintained her secret identity quite well, save for her team knowing and a few very select people. This allowed her to move into politics without too much of a problem. So,
Gotcha.
Because of that, and she would have fighting. Her fighting's degraded a little bit over time, but she used to be a heck of a martial artist. So I'm going to buy.
Well, that's moving into
right.
aptitudes.
So in the end, my defenses after my free die are 3, 3, 4, and 2. That has spent a total of 7 dice. 8 dice. I apologize. Wait.
Gotcha.
Yeah, 8 dice.
And so, Syko, what are you thinking on your character?
I am actually very much considering ripping off Edward Elric from Full Metal Alchemist.
Okay. I
I
have
mean, not
seen
ripping him off.
minimal Full Metal Alchemist, but that is totally cool. So tell me about that character.
I'm obviously don't know anything about the system pretty much, so just somebody that physically he's maybe a little bit better than your typical human, but above average reflexes wise, so obviously good reflex for him, and with just extremely versatile in his ability to adapt to any situation because his powers allow him to manipulate matter. He can't create it out of nothing, but what is there, he can be, okay, this was a tree, now it's a giant battering ram that's swinging towards.
He's a human transmuter, Brandon.
Yeah, I followed that. So, for your resistances, the question comes, how adept is he at taking, so damage in a social situation? Basically, how much does he keep his cool, or does he lose his cool very easily? How tough is he if you punch him? How quick is he to get out of the way if you try and punch him? And how likely is he to stick by his guns, resist mental attacks, that kind of stuff?
Getting away from the TV show, because a lot of this wouldn't apply, more for how I'm feeling, for my version of him at least, is composure not completely up to par, so I'm thinking maybe purchasing two. His fortitude and his fortitude, probably about a 3, being slightly more resistant. Reflexes, I do like keeping that up. And will, probably slightly less, because it's not.
So you were saying purchasing 2. Do you mean that you want to buy 2 on top of the free die, or do you want to just have it at 2?
Purchase 2 on top of the freebie.
Okay, that's a pretty intense composure. That's actually really high. That's someone that, if you deal with someone who
James Bond
would have have a total of 3. That's a pretty good one. He's between a 3 and a 4.
Oh, okay.
The examples on 3 composure are world leaders, spies, undercover agents, and other individuals, accustomed to dealing with extreme emotional stress. I'm reading this straight out of the book. 1 is going to be your everyday people dealing with everyday life. It's awkward teenagers turned into superheroes or unbalanced rage monsters. I wonder if they're referring to a certain green Goliath.
And that I'll just buy 1 and have a total of 2.
Okay.
And for the audience, I have now focused in on Brandon. He is currently screen sharing Syko's character sheet, character generator, as it is being built for the character.
This is just the version that Syko didn't give me a link. I just was filling in as we were going along.
I'm working on getting the link.
Awesome. All right. So there, we've got Syko's version of it, which I only have view access to. So, with a composure of 1, you're, accustomed to taking that kind of damage, dealing with those high intensity situations. With a fortitude of 4, you are probably in a minor brick type. With a reflex of 4, you're not a speedster, but you're definitely fast on your feet. Like Alice was talking about with hers, that she was going with 4 reflexes, a martial artist, and a will of 2. Once again, you're above average. Let's see what they say: spies, undercover agents, and special forces. So with the 25 points that you have blown 9 of those on making your resistances. And of course, those can always come down as you go. So for aptitudes, that's the next section on that sheet. And these are basically skills in other games. the way that they work, similarly to resistance, is everybody has one die in an aptitude. Everybody can roll something. The target numbers in this game for non-rolled opposition. If you're going up against an opposition, there's the defender sets the DC, the attacker is trying to make or exceed that DC. But for difficulties, 3 is a straightforward target number, 6 a moderate, 9 a hard, 12 very hard. Those are for mundane tasks. Exceptional tasks keep going up by 3 each time. And then super tasks start at 24, which is really hard to do. Most characters, 4 and 5 dice are probably very good. The thing about aptitudes is you can only keep 3 dice in a single aptitude after you roll. You can get around that by buying super aptitudes. What going beyond 3 dice gives you is a specialty, which will, so if you've got, if you had 3 dice in your academia and with a specialty of alchemy, that would, 3 spent dice. Specialty in alchemy, you would roll 4 dice whenever it came to alchemy, but you'd only get to keep 3 of those dice. And alchemy would probably more be a member of occultism. And depending on what you wanted to do with it, obviously there are plenty of superpowers that you can link to that. Alice, why don't you go ahead and go over what you're interested in for Solar Flare?
Okay, so I'm interested in buying Academia because she is an academic by all means. I'm going to buy, so I was looking at buying 1 additional die. Again, similar to defenses, aptitudes start at free 1 die. So buying 1 die in Academia gives me 2. I'm going to buy athletics.
And what that 2 dice effectively gives you a master's degree. That is the level of knowledge that you have in that field.
For I'm going to buy athleticism at 1 die, giving me a total of 2 dice. I am buying business at 1 die. I am buying fighting at 2 dice, meaning that fighting will be at 3. Continuing down, 1 in military for a total of 2. Performance of 2 for a total of 3. I'm going to buy 1 die in shooting for a total of 2 dice. And I'm going to be buying 1 additional custom aptitude, politics, because that is not in the standard list. I'm going to be buying 2 additional dice in that, giving her a total of 3 dice.
So what does politics mean to you that you think that you need a separate?
Well, I was thinking that I have most of it, to be honest. I have the business, which is what it is. It's a combination of business. It's a combination of academia. I was thinking about just leaving politics out and doing presence. That I was debating between that. So yeah,
I definitely think that between like business and presence, that's going to cover a lot of your stuff.
True.
Business is more of a managerial approach to it. And presence is interacting with people.
So I am buying 2 dice in presence, and that is going to be a total of 3 dice. Now the truth is I am tempted to bump each of those up because of her political position. Given that I don't want to give away who she is right now, given that I will be running this NPC, I will just say that she is a rather important character. She's not important as a campaign, but she, in the world of politics, she's pretty high up there. So she should probably be, 4 dice on at least one of those 2 stats. It's just I'm running low on points. So I'm going to.
You shouldn't come to talk about a character you don't want to talk about.
Yeah. I am going to pop her up to 4 presents total. So I'm going to buy 3 dice in that. And I am going to. I think that her fighting has probably degraded while she has kept her muscle memory. So I'm going to drop her fighting down to 2 dice, giving me something back. And I'll pop her business up to 2. Okay, so at this point, I'm really behind on points because I've now spent 8 in resistances and 12 in aptitudes, meaning that out of 25 points, I have 5 dice left to buy powers. Now, I still get to deal with my advantages and disadvantages, and those will, can alter things. One other thing that we didn't state before, competency dice is what we call for how many points we're spending, or making. So we said we're doing a 25 die character. That means we're doing 25 competency dice. If you have any competency dice unspent, those can be used on the fly as essentially similar to hero point
Aye.
during play. So
So
I may tweak the skills down a bit. We'll see. I probably will have to. But that's what my
moving.
aptitude at the moment.
Aye. So moving over to transmuter. Do you have any questions on what the different aptitudes are dealing with?
I feel I've got a basics just applying what they explain themselves. Arts and crafts being arts and crafts.
Yep.
Athleticism, physical ability. Awareness, I'm assuming, is general perception and possibly insight as well. Fighting, self-explanatory. Yeah, the rest of these are pretty much self-explanatory.
Okay. And so one thing that we haven't talked about is the system works that you can take trade-offs. So, for instance, if your occultism, that you're like, well, I don't know that much about the occult, but I'm into alchemy. What you can do is say that you have a trade-off, alchemy over this. Like for flight, one that I do with Angel from the X-Men is that he is more maneuverable than fast, and so that effectively gives him an extra die when his maneuverability is concerned, but he loses a die when his speed is concerned, since he's not the fastest flyer back in the Angel days. But he outflew basically everybody that he would ever go up against. And in his first appearance, I think he was like flying between the blades of a fan or something like that. And so that's the way that you can do trade-offs, which you just do as a note on this sheet that you're looking at.
And I just actually did that on mine, saying politics over boardroom is what I put in notes on business, and therefore that actually allowed me to give myself a die back because I dropped it. So therefore she'll be 1 higher for politics at 3, and then she'll be at 1 die for boardroom, which totally makes sense for her.
Gotcha. Do you want to expand that, because I can't even move the columns on the axis that I've got to your sheet?
Happy to. There you go.
So there it is, politics over boardroom on the focus.
That gave me a point back. I'm actually trying to think about some of the other stuff to try and give myself some points back on skills. So why don't you work with Syko and see where he would like his skills?
So like I said, occultism is more going to be covering things like alchemy or magic. Academia is your book knowledge of history, the sciences, the arts, religion, archaeology. And to get a specialty, you're going to you need to invest at least 3 dice into this aptitude, because you can keep 2 dice, or you can keep 3 dice whenever you roll, and the specialties just kind of let you try and hedge your bet when you're rolling that. So Hawkeye would have a very good shooting, and then would have extra with the bow.
Gotcha.
So how are you breaking down your aptitudes?
With most of this is actually just going to be supporting for his ability to be creative when he uses his powers. Hence the arts and crafts, maybe a little bit of benefit from investigation, but not so much. But then the military and the technology. And also I can see streetwise being able to benefit for more like knowing when, where, and being able to, well, if I mess with this, then I might collapse that building, or just common sense things. I feel like, where the rest of it, like his athleticism, well, he's been physically active. He's not a slouch. Awareness, using his powers, he does obviously have to pay attention so that he gets his desired effect without having unnecessary complications like accidental destruction that wasn't desired. Investigation just being his ability to do research and look into things, which would also be beneficial to how he was able to learn about his alchemy. The occultism itself being his powers.
Awesome. Just making some real quick there. All right. Then the next section that you go over to is going to be your powers, which it looks like you're working off of a power list from the basic, I guess, book is where you came up with that, or did you just name a power?
It's a drop-down menu.
Oh.
Yeah, you created
I don't see the
menu.
I don't see the drop-down menu because I'm just looking at your guys' sheets and only have view access. That would explain it. Well, lots of people have made lots of things. They don't remember everything. All right, so Alice, we're jumping back to you. For Solar Flare, what are the powers that Solar Flare is using? Silence. The Solar Flare has a mastery of silence.
Solar Flare has a density control as well as elemental control. I'm looking through and trying to figure out what else she would have. I've also gone back and adjusted some of my skills, as you can see.
Okay, so we ended up with 2 dice total in academia, 2 dice in athleticism, 2 dice in business, but like you said, politics over boardroom, 3 die of fighting, which you have empty hand. I don't know what that means. Is that supposed to be unarmed over armed?
Yes. So empty hand is a martial arts term, meaning that if you practice empty hand, meaning that you don't use weapons, versus someone who would actually pick up a sword and such like that. I practice.
Yeah, it's just you aren't listing over what what the trade-off is. 3 dice in perform, and you have spent 3 dice in presence, so you've got a 3 die presence with a specialty in diplomatic events. So, if you ever have to break out lightsabers and do that kind of diplomacy, I guess you're excellent at it. So your powers you're looking at, you're saying density control and elemental control. You might want to correct that one.
It's control. I'll just expand it for you.
Oh, okay. Wow. Because it had a lot of room, the space left on my screen, but it was only showing me control, and I'm like, weird. All right. What else, or what's your elemental control like in your mind?
She deals with solar energy, so UVA, UVB kind of solar energy. I didn't want it to be fire, but I wanted it to be radiation, solar radiation type.
Sunspot.
UV beam.
It is.
She rolls her eyes at me.
It's a concussive UV beam. Well, it's not a beam. It's a concussive bursts that come out.
Awesome. Do you have any other superpowers in your mind?
I'm thinking about it, and at the moment, no. Oh, she does fly. That was an important one.
So,
she does have flight.
One important thing that we have not mentioned to Syko here is each of these things you can generally only roll once during the course of an entire round. So from the start of initiative on that round to the end of initiative. If I punch you 4 times, you could use your composure once, your fortitude once, your reflex once, and then going over to transmuter, you could use your transformation defensively if you came up with something once. But then when it came to your attack, you would be like, well, I've used all of these things, and now I'm going to have to rely on my 2 die of fighting. But I got a staff, so at least I'm going to be 3 dice since you're specialized in that. And so that's a way that like earlier today, you guys were going up against tough opponents, and it can be very hard. In this one, as you go up against a tough opponent, you start whittling them down and forcing them into worse and worse situations where they're going to use different dice to defend themselves. The two exceptions to that rule are the armor power and the mental armor power,
which degrade.
and both of those both of those you can use multiple times around, but each time you use one, it gives you one less die. So if I use my 4-die armor once, it's 4 dice, but then the next time I use it, it's 3 dice that round.
Gotcha.
So for powers, you do not get a free die to start with. You start with 0 dice in each power, and you have to buy every single one of them legitimately. So for density control, I'm going to start with 2 dice. Elemental control, I'm going to go with 3. And for flight, I am going to go with 3.
Now, are you able to make yourself lighter as well as heavier with density control?
No, which I was about to get to. She can make herself heavier.
Okay.
She has, again, she is inspired by by sun, and she can increase gravity to herself, basically increase the density to herself through the bubbling of the solar pressure, but the sunspot pressure. But she cannot make herself lighter.
Okay, so for that you can do a limitation,
Yep.
which on the modifier sheet you can come up.
And we'll switch to that right now. And so for density control, let's go through my options here. I don't need split action. I don't need any of that. So, for her density control, she is going to take limited use.
Actually, I think for this, Alice, you can come down to power-specific complications, which will be even lower on the sheet, and select density control is only to get heavier. Mass.
You're right. This one you actually created it because it's a built-in.
And so that effectively, because she's taken a complication, cheapens the cost of the power, which means that her density control, while it's 2 dice, has only cost her 1 actual die. And the 2 dice of density control means that she can, each die lets you double your existing weight. So she goes from 200 to 400, from 400 to 800 pounds, while she's using density control. And your elemental control, Alice, what's the deal with that?
I'm thinking about it right now. So why don't you jump to him while I think about my limitations a little bit?
Sure thing. Coming back over to Transmuter. At the moment, you look like you have 6 dice in Transformation. Now, let me go ahead and just break down. I'm certain Transformation is doing exactly what you think it is. But let's go ahead and go over it a little bit. So, characters with this power can transform targets into something else. You can use it for an attack. Characters with transformation declare the nature of the change they hope to force on their target before making an attack roll. Targets with the transformation defend as usual and apply any resulting damage to either fortitude or reaction. Targets are effectively transformed once their fortitude or reaction is reduced to 0. Nature of the transformation. Transformed targets take on fortitude and reaction values appropriate to their new form as determined by the attacker. Attackers may allocate dice up to their transformation rating between their target's fortitude and reaction. Basically, you can start moving both of them, and it gets a little more fiddly. And then defense, the other major use of it. Characters can use transformation for defense. In such instances, characters might be transforming bullets into butterflies, fire into oxygen, or maybe just converting the air around their person into a brick wall to stop the incoming attack. Speaking of defenses, in a lot of games, like in Mutants and Masterminds, for instance, you're defending obviously with just your dodge or parry or something else if they ask for it. But the situation is static. You just remain where you are. In this, if I defend with my flight, I can move where I am. If I defend with teleport, I get to disappear. those, movement powers are really where that aspect comes up, but transformation is also one of them. That because you're using transformation for a defensive application, you are still able to make a noticeable change in the battlefield.
So I defend myself by generating a wall.
Yeah.
That wall is genuinely there.
Yep. And it's not really a game that you play on a battle mat. Mutants and Masterminds has, I think Mutants and Masterminds plays better without a battle mat most of the time, because it's so hard when people are like, yeah, I fly a mile at a time, which is great. I mean, that's superheroes, but how do you put that down? The old phase rip system with their city maps that were broken up into areas. I think that would actually work very well for Mutants and Masterminds.
Or Marvel Heroic, where you deal with zones. I like that for supers as well.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, because it's the melee zone, the closed zone, and then the range zone, and I like that out of Marvel Heroic from the Margaret Weiss one.
Oh, okay, yeah. And, Colossus is going to have a hard time keeping up with somebody who moves super fast. But
yeah, I knew I was talking about a different system than you, so I was like...
But I was specifically addressing on a battle map, so that's the reason I thought you were talking about the same one. Sorry.
No problem.
Do any of the other powers sound at all interesting to you, or do you think it's all in transmutation or transformation?
I've read through these twice, and I feel like I could probably stretch and justify some elemental control, but I do feel like it would be too much of trying to stretch it to justify it.
Gotcha. So, and just as another note on Mutants and Masterminds, how you can get alternate effects, that's an ability that you can do in this one as well, which gives you as many dice as the primary power. So, like if, transformation, and you say, well, another thing that I can do is ensnares. Now, that might be turning the air into, something wrapped around them to slow them down, but that's a different effect, and so you just click the alternate effect one line below transformation, type in whatever you want, and then fill that out. Don't have transformation clicked on the alternate effect, because that button starts changing the prices on things. But that's just to show you how you might accomplish something like that.
So, like that, where I could easily justify, I transformed the ground around you into a giant cave.
Yeah. And so then you'd want to put in how many dice of ensnare that is as well, and it won't charge you for those dice as long, and I believe that's the way I've got this calculated, as long as those dice are within the limit that transformation is doing. So, nope, dice purchased. You want to hit Control Z because you just changed a calculation field.
Okay.
So
hit
hit Control Z. Start hitting Control Z.
He wants to undo. Go so you can, if you can't hit undo, hit Control Z, hit edit, and then go to undo until you...
Now you should be able to put 6 dice purchased. And it looks like up on transformation you did the same thing, that you filled out the white. Yeah, the white is where the yellow is to show that I have done some sort of calculation. You can just control copy the ensnare 5 die, and then go up one line and paste that copied text, and it should fix.
Brandon, can you go to that mod sheet on the transmuter and then scroll down to something for me? Because I believe that the default sheet has a field filled that you're not wanting. So keep scrolling down. Yep, see, you have that limited form on by default for anybody copying, so you need to go clear that on your base sheet. That way anybody who copies it doesn't end up with something a free point to start with, basically.
Yeah, I swore that I deleted that out a little while ago, and it apparently did not clear. Alright, that has been cleared on the base sheet.
Fantastic.
And so yeah, that would be 5 dice for transformation and 5 dice for ensnare.
Yeah, because apparently the ultimate costs the dice.
Yep, costs 1 die. And so that's the exact same power, so you can't attack with transform and defend with ensnare or anything like that because you're still using the exact same power.
Gotcha.
Going back over to solar flare, Alice, I swore that I heard something about explosions. That when I punch people, there are explosions.
Yes. So for
but I don't
elemental control,
see.
so for elemental control, I have so I put in complications, touch attack required, because it is something that I have to be punching somebody in order to trigger. It cannot be used at range. Normally, elemental control is something that can be used at range. It can be used in a variety of fashions. This one, she can only do it if she is in melee with them. I also took negated by X for anything that would provide radiation protection. It would not affect them. I took a boost for lingering effects, for 1 extra round, because once I hit you, you're going to be burning for an extra round from that.
I believe you want persistent damage on that because that's a very
better.
different effect. And persistent damage
I like
is
persistent.
any type of dot. But what it does is you buy an amount of dice in persistent damage, and it will, after you punch them, it will do that dice. So if you bought like 3 dice, it will do that until they get a successful resist. So it can be very expensive, but anytime that you can generate more, make people defend extra times, it can become very beneficial for a group.
And for flight, she is taking visible because she leaves a trail. A very noticeable trail when she chooses to fly. So, at that point, when we go back to the worksheet, it tells me I have 1 competency die left because I actually bought my flight up to 4 in the end. We can go to the second tab and see my character sheet as it stands right now. I have 1 die left unspent. That's going to change once we work on advantages and disadvantages.
And you haven't named any of your powers, so they just have a space-space in front of them.
Yeah.
And elemental control, unfortunately, that is, you've put on a lot of stuff, and so it's kind of running beyond what it will allow in the powers. Google Sheets, unfortunately, are a little limited on the way that you can limit a field.
Yeah, I can always just shrink the text on it if I really need to, so I'll worry about that later.
Yeah, and so that's something that you can do.
Yep, that's what I've done on a couple characters.
I believe there is a make fit option. I'm actually surprised it's not checked right now. I'm going to have to go and look at that. But that's where you are. Transmuter looks like he has gotten burrowing and ensnare bought up so that you can plow through walls and such by transforming them into nothing at a pretty good speed, as I remember. I'm going the wrong way in the book. It always helps to know where you are. So, burrowing, characters can burrow through loose dirt as fast as they can run. Characters can choose to leave tunnels behind or collapse them. The earth behind them, collapse the earth behind them as they burrow. Particularly loose materials such as sand may collapse on their own. Harder materials can be burrowed through, but requires a character to roll the power. So, the defenses on brick, mortar, copper, or soft rocks is 9. Concrete, iron, nickel, and hard rock is 12. Apatite, I'm not familiar with that one. I just want to say apatite while I read it. Obsidian, opal, reinforced concrete, and steel are 15, and titanium is like an 18. Which my super dog in Alice's Friday game, Super Shorts, I have, I think, 5 dice of burrowing that the one time I've used it, I ripped the crud out of what I was going after. So it was fun.
And he was doing it to concrete.
So coming over to advantages as our next category of thing. flipping and flipping. So, Alice, what is Solar Flare's advantages?
Let me go over to that column. She has allies.
Okay.
She is a celebrity.
World famous and have many fans who know, love, and are willing to help them. Celebrity.
And she is wealthy.
Alright, so wealthy we were talking about recently. It allows you to spend, buy however many dice wealthy you want, and then you can bribe people with those dice, basically. And, other uses that a wealthy person could have.
You want to work for me? $20 cover it.
Yeah, sometimes $20 will it'll do a good thing. So, Alice, you are now 2 points overspent, and
Yep.
we'll get to your disadvantages in a minute, I guess.
Yep.
Oh, did you cut down those points?
Yeah.
I see less all of a sudden. Oh, I guess it would have been 4 a minute ago.
I cut.
Alright, so Transmuter, I see that you've got Dumb Luck. So, Dumb Luck, you're unnaturally lucky. Once per session, you can reroll any check you have made. Characters may take the advantage multiple times, allowing them to reroll multiple times, but you can only reroll each action once. And were there any other advantages that jumped off the page to you on their titles?
I read through them, and from what I could figure just from the names, nothing else seemed to fit.
The names are pretty, accurate. I think that they give a good job of, making you feel it. I'm not saying they're overly complex or concepts they're trying to convey, but I don't know if it was Aldo and his partner who redid the revised rules. His partner is Russ Boyd, or if it was Simon who wrote the original that named them. But yeah, I think that reading it, you get a pretty good idea. So you would want to spend at least 1 die on that Dumb Luck in the spent column.
Yeah, I was trying to look through the disadvantages and see if I could find anything that would be able to pay for it.
So the bad luck is always basically, if you're overspent and you don't have anything else, you just pile on bad luck, which is the opposite of dumb luck. One gives you the rerolls, the others the GM asks you to reroll, which can always be a fun character that you balance both of those aspects. As soon as you dumb luck something, they cannot make you bad luck it, based on my thing. But I think that might be a house rule, because each one says you can only use that specific thing to reroll it once. Oh, actually, no. Dumb luck does just identify may only reroll a particular action once, so I'd say that's protected. Alice, how about you on disadvantages?
Oh, she's got a ton. She's got dependents, because she has a number of people that rely on her. She, like I said, was pressured into retiring to follow the path of politics, because that's where her family was dealing with for a long time, and they wanted her to they wanted her to progress past where they did, and they believe she had it. She has enemies, both superpowered and non-superpowered. She has mental hindrances of the fact that she has multiple, but I'm only going to be buying her one for the sake of ease. She has a great weight of responsibility on her, which constantly weighs on her, that she can't let people down that depend on her. She has a public ID.
So she has a sense of duty.
She has a sense of duty,
say.
yes. She has a public ID, making it very difficult for her to actually do any superheroic work these days, because it makes it very difficult for her to be, if she's found out. She has a secret identity, which is a separate thing, because, she has a secret identity that she has been keeping under wraps for nearly 30 years now. And she has what did I list for her social hindrance? I forget.
I don't know. Your notes seem to be empty on this.
Yeah,
so.
I was just getting started when you came over to me. So, but I forgot what my social hindrance was for her. Oh, she is uh, she can she has people who consider her a Valkyrie of social justice. So
I don't understand what that means.
Yeah, I actually think I'm going to drop that particular social hindrance because I didn't like the way that it was worded. So I'm probably going to drop it for the moment.
I mean, this seems to be hitting the exact same
I
button as
realize that.
celebrity,
Yeah.
your mental hindrance, your public ID, your dependence, even.
So I realize that I shouldn't do that.
And so that net, all said and done, that's netting you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bonus dice.
That should be check again. Over.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 bonus dice.
Okay, yeah. So but I'm up 3 from being down earlier on it. So I have a total of 3 dice that I can still spend.
So with those competency dice, now that Alice is at the end of character creation, obviously she can go back and fiddle all she wants, but she can either up her powers or she can keep those as competency dice. The way that those work is they're like the hero points of the system. You don't start innately with one. We as a lot of groups, I think, as a house rule, kind of let you have one, even if you start
Per
with
session.
0.
Yeah, per
Yeah.
session.
But they let you enter a scene like an old issue from Changeling. You can ignore disadvantages. You can you burn it to improve a roll, add an extra die. You can interrupt somebody's action and get to take an action. Gives you some narrative control as long as it's agreed on by the GM. You can stunt your powers, similar to mutants and masterminds. Reuse the same attribute that you've already used in a round, or you can take one for the team, which allows you to interpose from mutants and masterminds. And so they have a bunch of things, and you gain them throughout basically the same kind of way, whatever your group likes. We always do it for, if you make the table laugh, if you do something super awesome that makes everybody go wow, if your flaws really are coming up and hindering you, that episode, that issue, we pass those out too. And I'm not certain if those are all those are in the base rules for supers, or if that's more the way that Alice and I have just dealt with them because of other games as well. So, Transmuter, did you come up with? Oh, you definitely came up with some disadvantages. So, how are we doing on those?
Well, I'm not sure what to deal with as far as putting the notes in, but having a personal enemy, I honestly have a tendency with that for one, just to first session DM's choice. Mm-hmm. Who is my enemy? Surprise me.
I think that's always a cool way to do it. A lot of people can have enemies, and giving the DM some sort of idea that, I want a nemesis.
I don't care if it's my long-lost sibling who I just absolutely hate, and so we stay apart until we meet each other, and I feel sorry for the city that got between us. But that, then for the others, social hindrance and rage, I figured those can go kind of hand in hand in that, well, he has triggers that can really aggravate him. Yeah, I admit I kind of stole this from actual Edward Elric. If you ever make a short comment, expect to be flying across the city. Social hindrance in that, well, he's not exactly a social person. It's not that he has a problem talking to people, so much as he's not exactly known for putting in the right words at the right time. Usually it's the wrong ones.
Oh, he has foot and mouth disease.
Yes, exactly. It's like, would you like some salt with your crow?
Gotcha.
Public ID, I don't know if it actually fits it, but just he doesn't hide who he is.
Mm-hmm.
So not so he doesn't have an alternate identity. If he's walking down the street, there's no transformation or anything. Anybody can point out it's him. Like if Thor walks down the street, everybody's like, that's Thor.
Yep. So that's the long and short of character generation. There is a random character generation in the back of the book that is a lot of fun. Alice and I and a very good friend of ours, Alex, who to anybody who watched the Vigilante City Banff podcast, he was a member of that. That he was the ninja or samurai. It was something like that because I remember him having a sword. But yeah, the two of them were run through a game where they randomly rolled up dual androids, and Alice came up as they rolled their powers. They had these abilities, but they had these glaring flaws, and so Alice came up with this wonderful idea: is that they were the discarded rejects. And what kind of discarded rejects were they? Well, they were built to be spy bots, and the reason that she picked that is because she got not transformation, shape change.
Shape change, and I didn't have the fortitude to actually stay. So I couldn't actually stay if I changed into something like a table and somebody put something on me. I wasn't strong enough to hold the item on me, so I'm like, must stay in table, must stay as table, must stay as table. Psh, collapse. And so they discarded me because I couldn't stay any form to actually spy long enough to gain information as soon as somebody dropped something on me, like keys or something that that you throw on a side table or something.
And so the fact that they were androids was rolled up, and all their powers and such were rolled up. And I think you get a couple points at the end that you get to throw around to, either fix your holes up or pick something else. And but it made a very entertaining character creation session and an extremely entertaining game. So entertaining that Alice decided to reskin it and run it for a number of people as a hangout game where we increased the number of androids. I think we had 5 players in that one.
We had manual labor.
Each of the androids had glaring problems, and but they all had this. They were discards of a super spy thing, and so it can be a lot of fun and a good time to just do that. The play is pretty simple. Alice, you were about to say something.
I was just going to say my favorite of that reskin was the character you ended up playing, which was a character that's flaw was could only speak in pop culture references. So, it was like, it was hilarious because he was just writing out all sorts of things and changing voices and doing stuff.
I was, very Bumblebee from Transformers, just attempting to go find movie quotes, which I stuck to other than once. And I know of shows that would do this, but I just couldn't say which show or like what episode and all. But I was looking up movie quotes so that I could fit them in. And sometimes they were kind of like looking at me like, what did he mean by that and all? But most of the time, I think the meaning got across. And the one time that I did a random one was like it was just black character on a TV show, and it was like, don't go in there, or oh hell no would have been Winston from
it would be Shy McBride. That's his catchphrase. Yeah.
So and but it was a lot of fun.
Do you want to show your camera again and sign us off?
So do you have any questions at that point?
Yeah, there was one. You've gone over it with Lala a bit as far as setting the limitations on the powers.
So if you go over to the mods page, you can do this without using the mods because the mods I added later on. So you can do it in notes and just adjust the additional cost that's there. But if you go over to the mods page, you will see up at the top of the column is the power's name. You've got the power type. And then there's boosts, which are the beneficial ones. And then there's complications. And then if you keep scrolling down, there's power-specific ones that will give you boosts or complications. And those are filled in off of what they came up with in the book. So like transformation area area effect, and the way area effect works in supers is rather than having a defined this is a 10-foot burst, this is a 20-foot burst, since it's a loose interpretation of battle mats and stuff, we more look at how many targets can I hit. If I'm a Star Destroyer and I've got an area effect, that's going to be a bigger area than if I'm a person, but I'm still going to be able to hit 2 ships or 4 ships. Where a person will be looking at, I can punch 2 guys or shoot beams out of my eyes at 2 people. And it doubles each time that you spend an extra die on it. The area effect mastery goes hand in hand with that on, sparing targets. There is an optional rule in the book, in the Super's Red book, about the using more traditional of feat of the area attack, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I think that I really do like the looser interpretation of area. Is there any specific boost or complication that you're wondering about?
Reading through it, a lot of these are self-explanatory. Like ongoing, I'm assuming that one just means that, okay, I've turned this into something else, and that way it has physically become what it is now.
Well, ongoing is if your force field shuts off when you go unconscious, ongoing gets around that. Things like that. They remain active even after you are knocked out of the fight.
So I feel like that would be fitting, because even if you knock me out, my power isn't something that I have to sustain. It is, once I've done it, it's done.
Yeah.
One that had me curious, I'm pretty sure I'm getting it, but burnout.
Burnout, let me flip to that. And I believe burnout, you get less dice the more that you use it. A power with this complication diminishes with use. The power's rating drops by 1 die after every use. The effect is cumulative. The power's rating resets at the end of the scene. So it's more of a scene-based charge, a diminishing charge, rather than a session-based.
Fades for Mutants and Mastermind.
Yep.
And for how it was being described, okay. I wasn't so much going for the idea of, like, I snap my fingers and the air around you has just changed. It's more along I wanted to keep it more true to the show in this case, in that he has to make direct physical contact. So
okay. Touch attack is where you would be.
Clicking the touch attack. Like I was saying, that when she punches with her fist, that concussive blow on that elemental control goes off, so I put touch attack restriction on mine.
And I'm assuming that, similar to how it would be, like, for anybody that's seen the show, there were many occasions where he would have to touch the ground, and he'd be able to manipulate the ground itself to do ranged stuff, but he still required direct physical contact with whatever he was manipulating. Like, I guess an easy example would be, I remember one time he was in a hallway, and he smacked the wall next to him, and like 30 feet down, still the same wall, a big pillar shot out of the wall to smack whoever he was fighting. Would that still be touch?
That I don't think would be touch, but it's very similar, and since touch attack only gives you, like, touch attack already gives you a 1 die, and any limitation that you would have would also give you a 1 die. It basically means the same thing, but what can he affect air? Can he affect gas? Or does it have to have...
In the show, there were characters that could, but he's not one that ever did. I was going to stick him with only solid matter.
Yeah,
just solid.
And so that might be, the limitation that, like, a limited use has to, touch, object to change it, rather than do touch attack.
And I see one for limited use objects only because I did want to, follow the human alchemy a no-no. He can technically do it, but does not want to pay the price.
Yeah. So you have to change the things around them. But yeah, things like that. There's always ways around. And yes, on the sheet, each one only has one entry. So if you wanted to limited use objects only, and then also limited use of the has to touch, probably touch tech is where you're gonna just do it and talk to your GM. Conditional could probably be it. I don't know what conditional normally is. One of the guys, John McMullen, I haven't seen the sheet, but he said he worked on a PDF after seeing mine and was kind of inspired, which is cool because I wanted to see. I was thinking about trying a PDF because I didn't know how that would work.
Are we closing
Yeah,
up this at this point?
depends if Syko's got any more questions.
I think I'm good for now. I got the basics, I feel like.
Okay.
Awesome.
Brandon, why don't you sign us off and I'll stop the recording.
So there's that's just an example of Super's Red character creation. It's a wonderful book written by Aldo Regalato and Russ Boyd. It is owned by the Hazard Studios. Walt Rubelard is one of the owners there, and he's a great guy that is always around for questions, comments, or concerns. Art is Walt. Walt is one of the artists. Joe Singleton, Abe Smith are in there as well, and I haven't talked to this one myself, but DT Buccino are the artists on it. It's a fantastic product, and you can see actual plays from Alice's once a week, theoretically, Super Shorts, where we deal with the Banff podcast and have hijinks there in Philadelphia. And it's a great time. Thank you so much, Syko, for saying, hey, I'd love to, but I can't buy the book, so how can I learn? Alice and I are always willing to help people learn. Walt says we're Super's royalty because of it. And Alice, thank you as always for your wonderful ideas.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.